Hey, welcome back. We're so glad you're here for week 2, where we're asking the question, how can I settle my past so that I can live the future God's designed for me? We've been a part of many small groups over the years, and we've discovered that the most successful groups cultivate a safe environment where each member allows space to listen and encourage others, as well as share their own stories. Keep in mind that we all have differences in opinion, and we're all at different phases in our spiritual walk. And that's why it's important that as a group, you agree to be gentle and gracious towards one another, always encouraging when appropriate, and speaking the truth in love. So, in your group right now, make it a point to agree to cultivate this kind of environment. Today, we're going to be talking about what happened in the Garden of Eden in a way you've probably never heard before. So get yourself ready, and let's jump right in.
A minister, a friend of mine, Bob Hamp, tells a story that just kind of rocks my world and my thinking about freedom. He talks about, what if there was a little guy born, like a little boy born in a prison? I know that sounds terrible, because it would be terrible, but the thought is, what if the baby was born in a prison, and all that baby, he's 1, he's 2, he's learning to crawl in prison, he's walking for the first time in prison, he grows up in the nursery in prison, and his whole life, he's now 10, 12, 15, a teenager going into his 20s, and all he has ever known is a prison bed, a prison cell, prison food, prison guards. He's only known going out in the prison yard, the basketball court out there, or the prison yard, and the fence around, and the barbed wire, and he looks out there and he sees trees on the other side, he sees cars going by or whatever, but the only perspective this kid has from birth on is from a prison cell. He has a prison perspective. What would freedom look like for someone who has a prison perspective? Well, I would think that he's going, man, there's got to be better food than this. I wish I wasn't always told what to do. Maybe there would be a way to be able to do some stuff and maybe not be always confined to my room or doing this. Maybe in his mind, it's getting out of that cage or out of that fence onto the other side, and maybe there's some stuff on the other side. He said, man, I'd just like to go over and eat at that restaurant or do this, whatever. But I want you to think about it. If a prison perspective is in play, then all he's thinking about freedom is getting out of there. I just want to get out of this place. I just want to get out of this circumstance. There's no way that freedom to him is going to Hawaii. He don't even know what Hawaii is, much less knowing what the ocean is in Hawaii or being able to surf. That's not even in his dream perspective of freedom. It's just getting out of the situation, not getting to go do that. He had never even thought about going to Colorado to the mountains to climb mountains or to ski down the mountain. Because why? He doesn't even know what mountains are. He hasn't seen mountains. He hasn't ever known that there is a Colorado. Do you get what I'm saying? A prison perspective kind of limits you on your definition of freedom. It's just, man, I don't want what I have. I want to get out of this. It doesn't really give you a perspective of what the potential of real life could be. And you know what's interesting is that every single one of us has been born in sin. We all, in a sense, spiritually have a prisoner's perspective. How would we not? All we've ever known is the sin issue of our life. All we've ever known is these habits and these problems and these sin issues and bondage and iniquity. That's all we've ever known. Now, we read in the scripture and we find out about Jesus and we find out about the freedom he says we can have, and we read about Jesus' life and the way he lived and the connection he had to the Father and the abundant life of how he lived and all that he got to do in relationship to the Father and how we can have that relationship. That's the only way we even have a concept outside of a prison perspective of what abundant life looks like, is that we can have a relationship with the Father like Jesus had a relationship with the Father. And yet many of us are still living with a prison perspective of, man, freedom would just be if I could just get out of this, bad habit, if I could just get out of this situation, if I could just quit thinking this way or acting that way. And there's part of that. Getting out of stuff is the beginning of freedom. Stepping into the life he has for you. Now we're talking freedom to the fullness. I want you to understand that this prison perspective has been an issue for us all the way back in the garden in the beginning in Genesis chapter 2. God made everything perfect. Talk about living where there was no prison perspective thought. As Adam and Eve, man, they had it perfect. There was no sin. There was no prison. There was no bondage. It was all freedom, clear communication with God, clear connection to the source of life. And God just said one thing. Hey, there's a tree in the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat of that tree, for the day you eat of that tree, you will surely die. Now, he doesn't say if you eat of the tree, it'll kill you. He says you will surely die. The concept here of death is a spiritual concept of death, which is separation. Separation, disconnected from the source of life, who is God. That this is going to mess up our relationship and the connection you have to life in me. I want you to understand something. Most of us have the concept of sin being disobeying God's rules. And there's a sense in which that's true. But God doesn't just make up rules so he can be the rule maker, you know, and like, hey, I got a bunch of rules. Now, y'all all do what I say. He only makes rules to protect us from danger. Only reason as a dad I say, don't play in the street is because there's cars coming by and I don't want my kids to get hurt. If there weren't any cars going by, go play in the street. I have rules because I don't want them to get hurt. I have rules because, hey, don't touch the stove, you'll get burned. That's why we have that rule, okay? A good father, that's how they think. So God set up the rule to protect them from what? From being disconnected to life. See, there was the tree of life, and then there was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And these trees, very different. When the enemy came and tempted Eve to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, what was his whole deception? What was his whole temptation? Did God really say you can't eat of this tree? Why did he do that? Does he not want you to know something? Is he holding out on you? Is there a better life than what he's given to you? And so the lie here is God's holding out on you and you can do something here outside of what God has for you and get something better. That's the lie. So ever since then, all of mankind has had this kind of feeling inside of us that maybe my way is better than God's way. Maybe doing things the way I want to do it and how I feel it would be better, maybe that's going to give me a better life. But here's the truth of the matter. Knowledge can't give us life. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil gave us what? The knowledge of a whole bunch of stuff that's good. Oh, look at this is all good. I know this. This is good. And then the knowledge of evil, a bunch of stuff that we know that's bad. But and that's really, you know, amoral. It's not good or bad to know these things. To know what's good, to know what's bad, fine. That's not evil. But here's the thing, is if you think that getting the knowledge, getting to do what you want, going your own way, doing what you determine is this and that and what's truth for you, if you think that's what's going to bring you life, listen, knowledge can't give us one drop of what we lost in the garden with Adam and Eve. Because life doesn't come from knowledge. Let me just show you the difference between going your own way and doing things based off of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil versus doing things God's way and just depending on receiving it and life in him. See, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil type thinking, things like this. Hey, I got to just try really hard, you know, to get to God. If I just keep trying really hard, maybe I can make him like me more, as if he doesn't like us. That's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. I just got to try harder. I got to try to get closer to him. But the tree of life just says, you just need to receive the fact that he loves you perfectly right now. That you just receive it. The life is from him, that he loves you as a good father, and he already loves you. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil says you got to do more to get to God. The tree of life says he's already done it all. You just got to receive what he's done. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil tells you, okay, obey God out of duty, because that's what you're supposed to do. But the tree of life says, obey God out of delight. Is this what I want to do because I love him and he's the author and the source of life, and I want to do what he says because he knows better than me. That's that kind of thinking. In 1 John chapter 5, verse 3, it says this: if you love God, you keep his commandments, and his commandments aren't burdensome. What? His commandments aren't burdensome? I can't tell you how many Christians I know who think of God's commandments and his word as a ball and chain around their leg. It's like, I got to do this, I can't do that, I have to do this, and all of that. That's a mentality of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But the tree of life is spoken that if I love God, then I want to keep his commands. So it's backwards the other way. For the tree of the knowledge of good and evil says like, oh man, I better keep his commands, or that means I don't love him, But the tree of life says, are you kidding? I love him. So I want to do anything that he wants me to do because he loves me, I love him, and I want to please him. It's just like that kind of mentality in marriage. What kind of mentality, if you're married, what kind of mentality is the best mentality? Tree of knowledge of good and evil is more like, hey, man, stop thinking. Come on, self. Stop thinking about other women. You got to keep your marriage together. To keep your marriage, you got to stay away from other women. Stay away from other women, right? That's tree of knowledge of good and evil. That's trying and working and trying to focus on doing out of duty what you got to do. But the love relationship, the tree of life type mentality is, man, I love my wife so much. Why would I want to be with anybody? I want to be with her. I want to build such a great relationship with Jenny that I'm not even thinking about any other women. Why would I want anybody else? I've got the best woman in the whole world and the best relationship in our marriage. Is that the kind of relationship that you have with the Lord? That's a relationship of life, abundant life he wants you to have. He's come to give you that kind of life. He is inviting you in just to receive it. You don't have to do anything to get to him. He's already done it all. You don't have to try to get him to like you. He already loves you perfectly. Do you know that the scripture says in Romans 5:8 that God demonstrated his love towards us in this, that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. He loves you. Life isn't found in gaining more knowledge. Nothing wrong with knowledge. We need to know the truth. But life is found in Jesus. Let me just tell you guys, Jesus didn't come. The biggest problem he came to solve wasn't to clean up our misbehavior. No, it was to connect us back to life, to connect us back to him. Freedom isn't going to come by gritting your teeth and, I'm going to live holy. It comes getting a relationship with him, getting close to him. In John 15, verse 5, Jesus says, I'm the vine, you're the branches. If you remain in me and my word remains in you, you will bear fruit, but apart from me, you can do nothing. Does it really mean apart from him you can't do anything? No, apart from him, though, you're not going to come into life. There is no life by doing things the way you want to do it. The life comes in remaining in him and his word in you. That's where the fruit of the Spirit comes. Galatians 5:22 says it is the Spirit of God that produces his character in you, or his fruit in you, of love, joy, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. These things that you want in your life, the character of God comes only by connecting to him in his life. Guys, don't live with a prison mentality, a prison perspective where you think, man, I just got to get out of this. I got to quit doing this. I need to do more. I need to do this. And start spending time with the author and the source of life. And when you do that, he will speak into your heart and into your mind incredible things he has for you. That's beyond getting out of the problems, but coming into the beautiful, awesome purposes he made you for. In 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9, it says, no eye has seen, no mind has conceived, no ear has heard what God has planned for his people who love him. But he has chosen to reveal it to us by his Spirit. You want the abundant life that true freedom is about? It's going to come not by you getting more and more knowledge and trying to work your way into it and doing it your own way. It's not going to work. You've already tried it. That ain't going to work. You know what's going to work? Getting into the Word. It's spending time with him that's going to make the difference. It may be as simple as reading the Bible in the morning, praying during the day, getting scripture and podcasts in your commute in the car. It's just finding ways to consume your life with him. That's when he's going to speak to you. It's not going to be something you see, something even you hear from somebody else, or you even thinking up on your own. That's the tree of knowledge stuff. It's going to be by hearing his word, his Spirit, and what he says. That's when you'll find true life.